In every age, there comes a moment when silence is no longer an option. A moment when the heart of the Church trembles not because of persecution from the outside, not because of the familiar hostility of the world, but because of a wound inflicted from within. These are the moments when the faithful look not toward governments or ideologies, but toward Rome, expecting clarity, strength, and the steady voice of tradition. And yet, sometimes what emerges from the highest places of authority is not clarity, but confusion. Not reassurance, but disquiet. Not continuity, but rupture. Today, we step into one of those moments. A brotherhood known for its unwavering loyalty to Catholic tradition, priests who have been formed in the furnace of fidelity, men who have dedicated their entire lives to preserving the treasures of the Church, has taken a dramatic and deeply sorrowful stand. They are not speaking with anger, nor with cold defiance, nor with the spirit of rebellion. They speak with sorrow, with a sense of responsibility, with a desire to defend something sacred that they believe has been wounded. And their decision has begun to echo across the Catholic world with a force that Rome cannot ignore. What you are about to hear is not merely a dispute over language. It is not a clash of opinions or a disagreement over pastoral strategy. It is a struggle over the very heart of Marian devotion, Catholic identity, and the continuity of the faith handed down through centuries. It is a struggle that touches the soul of every Catholic who has ever whispered a Hail Mary in the dark, or knelt in front of a statue of the Mother of God seeking comfort, or carried a rosary during times of fear and uncertainty. It happened quietly, as things in Rome often do. A new Vatican note was released, signed by Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez and endorsed by Pope Leo XIV. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing extraordinary, another doctrinal clarification, another attempt to refine certain expressions, another short document adjusting language that millions of Catholics have used in prayer for generations. It had the usual calm, administrative tone that so many Vatican communications adopt, neat, polished, unthreatening. But beneath the surface of the carefully chosen words, something was different. And when the document began to circulate, a storm broke out. Inside the Vatican, the reaction was swift and uneasy. Outside the Vatican, the tremor spread like a sudden cold wind. In seminaries, in chapels, in religious houses, in Marian shrines, in quiet villages where workers pray the rosary before dawn, people felt something shift. What had been presented as a mere clarification did not land like a footnote. It landed like a blow. This was not a minor linguistic adjustment. This was not an academic nuance. This was not a mere theological footnote tucked away in some underread volume. To many Catholics around the world, it felt like a direct blow to the titles of the Virgin Mary, the beloved titles handed down through centuries of devotion and liturgy. Titles whispered at deathbeds, chanted in monasteries, taught to children by their grandmothers, proclaimed in pilgrimages and processions. Titles that have shaped the Catholic soul. Now they were being questioned. The halls of the Vatican, usually governed by careful restraint and the quiet management of controversy, carried an unusual murmur. Even among those who prefer silence to debate, even among officials who seldom reveal their thoughts, there was a sense that something dangerous had been done. A sense that a threshold had been crossed. A sense that a rupture in the continuity of Marian devotion was silently widening. The note insisted it was merely providing clarification. But to millions of Catholics, it felt like an attempt to downplay or even dismiss the rich Marian language that had become part of the Church's spiritual bloodstream. It felt like an embarrassment over the vocabulary of popular devotion, as though what generations had held sacred was now deemed outdated or uncomfortable. When the document reached the priestly society of St. Pius X, the fraternity, their response was immediate, clear, and strikingly bold. From their general house in Menzingen, a statement was issued on November 11th. And it did not soften its message. It did not hide behind diplomatic vagueness. It did not attempt to negotiate tone or intention. It spoke plainly. According to the fraternity, the Vatican note did not clarify Marian theology, it weakened it. Worse, in their judgment, it distorted the language of the Church, reducing centuries of theological insight into something that resembled mere devotional exaggeration. They accused the document of diminishing the role entrusted by God to the Virgin Mary in the mystery of salvation. To the priests of the fraternity, Mary is not a figure of sentimental inspiration. She is not merely the mother of Jesus. She is the new Eve. She is the mediatrix of all graces. She is the co-redemptrix who stood at the foot of the cross offering her maternal suffering in union with her Son. These titles, for them, are not poetic embellishments. They are truths rooted in tradition, truths defended by saints, truths venerated in liturgy, truths illuminated by centuries of devotion. And then came the line that sent a jolt through the Catholic world. Fernandez dethrones the Virgin Mary and offends divine wisdom. It was a sentence that cut through every layer of theological politeness. It was the kind of sentence that could not be ignored. Because at that point, the issue was no longer about language. It was about an accusation that the Mother of God herself had been dishonoured, that something sacred had been tampered with. For countless Catholics, this felt personal. Deeply personal. It felt like an injury not only to theology, but to their own spiritual inheritance. Faced with what they called a public offense against the Virgin, the priests of the fraternity made a decision that stunned even those accustomed to internal church tensions. They decided to respond not with debate, not with harsh words, not with public argumentation, but with a worldwide act of reparation. They announced that every priest of the fraternity, in every chapel and every priory around the world, would offer a prayer of reparation during every public Mass on Sunday, November 16th. This was not symbolic. It was not a small addition to the liturgy. It was a global spiritual intervention. At the end of every Mass that day, they would recite the Litany of Loreto with its ancient titles of Mary, followed by the Stabat Mater, the sorrowful hymn that contemplates Mary beneath the cross. These prayers were chosen deliberately. They proclaim exactly the Marian truths the Vatican note sought to soften. It was as if the fraternity was saying, "You may question these titles, but we will proclaim them twice as loudly." Their statement concluded with a line that many found both bold and arresting. They invoked Mary explicitly as co-redemptrix, affirming her universal intercession and her role in dispelling darkness. And then they added the striking words spoken by Christ on Calvary, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." It was not condemnation. It was not anger. It was sorrow. It was a plea for mercy upon those who, in their judgment, had wounded Marian devotion. This act was not about rebellion. It was about healing. It was about repairing what they believed had been torn. It was about standing before heaven with the pain of the faithful and offering it as an act of love. But this story does not end with the fraternity's statement. It only begins there. Because beneath the controversy lies a deeper struggle, the struggle between continuity and rupture, between memory and modernity, between inherited faith and reinterpreted doctrine. To understand why so many Catholics have reacted with grief, one must step back. One must look into the long story of the Church, a story of battles fought for truth, of saints defending doctrine, of centuries of devotion shaping the life of the faithful. For decades, the Church has lived with an unspoken tension, the tension between those who guard tradition as something to be preserved, and those who seek adaptation for the modern world. These differences usually remain hidden under diplomatic language, but sometimes a single event tears away the veil. This Vatican note was one of those events. Why did a simple document provoke such a storm? Because to millions, Mary is not an abstract theological concept. She is a mother. She is a refuge. She is the one whose name they whisper when they are afraid, the one they call upon in the darkest nights, the one whose image they keep by their bedside, the one whose intercession they trust more than anything in this world. When the Vatican appears to challenge her titles, it feels like losing something irreplaceable. Think of every Marian shrine on earth. Think of the candles burning before her statue. Think of the millions who have knelt before her with tears. Think of the soldiers who carried her image into battle. Think of the children who learned to pray by clutching a rosary. Think of Lourdes, Fatima, Guadalupe, La Salette, Nok, Czestochowa, the Philippines, Latin America, Africa. The world has one shared language, the language of Mary. To question her titles, in the eyes of many, is to touch the heart of a child and ask him to doubt his mother. This is why the fraternity reacted with such force. They felt that something essential had been altered. Something ancient, something beautiful, something that belonged not only to theology but to the soul of the Church. To understand the depth of their response, imagine the life of a traditional priest. A man who rises before dawn to kneel in silence before the Eucharist. A man who has prayed the rosary thousands of times until its rhythm became part of his breathing. A man who has preached countless sermons about Mary's purity, her intercession, her role in salvation. A man who has comforted the dying by placing a Marian medal in their hand. A man who believes that Mary was given to the Church at Calvary as a mother. Now imagine that man reading a Vatican document that appears to diminish the Marian vocabulary he has spent his life defending. To him, it is not a policy issue. It is a wound. Reparation is one of the most misunderstood practices in the Church. It is not anger disguised as devotion. It is not protest wearing the clothing of prayer. Reparation is love suffering for love. It is saying, what others wound, we will tend. What others ignore, we will honor. What others diminish, we will defend. That is why the fraternity's call for reparation struck the Catholic world so deeply. It reminded many that devotion still matters. That tradition still matters. That fidelity is not an outdated virtue. Their act was not political. It was spiritual. It was a cry to heaven. Soon after their announcement, discussions erupted across Catholic communities, blogs, podcasts, seminaries, prayer groups, parishes. Some sided with the Vatican. Others with the fraternity. Many were simply overwhelmed. But no one denied that something profound had happened. For the first time in years, Catholics were openly asking questions that had long been kept quiet. Who guards tradition? Who defines devotion? What authority does Rome have over centuries of popular piety? Can a document strip meaning from what the faithful have believed for generations? Where is the line between clarification and rupture? These questions reveal a deep anxiety within the Church. The Vatican presents a unified face to the world, but inside its walls, reactions vary, some irritated, some concerned, some contemplative, some sympathetic. Rome knows it cannot ignore this moment. Not because the fraternity is large, but because it spoke for millions who cannot speak. People who pray quietly, who keep the faith alive in humble ways, who love Mary deeply. This controversy has exposed a fracture, not a formal schism, but a deeper spiritual fracture. Some Catholics believe the Church must adapt to survive. Others believe adaptation risks losing identity. Most want a balance, renewal without rupture, development without denial. But each new tension pushes the Church further apart. Marian theology, more than any other field, reveals this divide because Mary touches the heart. People may debate Christology calmly, but challenge the titles of Mary and they rise like children defending their mother. The silent majority of Catholics, the ones who do not speak publicly, have also felt this wound. They pray quietly in homes, workplaces, and small chapels. They are not activists or theologians. But they love Mary with a love deeper than words. When her honor seems diminished, they feel it deeply. They pray not out of rebellion but out of sorrow. When the fraternity called for reparation, it was a signal to these hidden faithful that they were not alone. It was a sign that devotion still has defenders. That the love of Mary is still alive. Reparation transforms pain into offering. It says, we will not fight. We will not hate. We will not divide. But we will pray, and offer, and love. And sometimes, that is the most powerful response. Now the question that hangs over the Church is simple: what will the Vatican do? Will it reaffirm the document? Modify it? Clarify it? Remain silent? This time, silence will not suffice. The wound is too deep, the faithful too attentive, the controversy too widespread. The Church stands at a decisive moment. Everyone feels it. Everyone senses it. And Mary stands at the center of the storm as she always has, calm, motherly, faithful, unshaken. And through it all, the faithful whisper the same prayer, the one they have prayed for centuries, the one no document can silence: Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us.